The fish sitting in your grocery store's fresh seafood section right now might be pumped full of antibiotics, loaded with mercury, and there is a 1 in 3 chance it is not even the species on the label. You're standing there thinking you are making a healthy choice for your family, and the entire system is basically lying to your face. But which fish are the real dangers and which ones actually belong on your plate? Tilapia is the hot dog of the ocean, and I don't mean that as a compliment. It's cheap, it's everywhere, and most people have no idea what actually goes into producing it. Americans import roughly 4.3 million pounds of fresh tilapia fillets every single month, making it one of the most consumed fish in the country. But here's what the price tag doesn't tell you. Most of the tilapia you're buying comes from massive freshwater farms overseas, mainly in China, and these fish are raised in conditions that would make a sardine claustrophobic. We're talking packed pens where disease spreads faster than gossip at a family reunion. To keep the fish alive long enough to harvest, farmers pump them full of antibiotics, and not just any antibiotics. Reports from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch found evidence of banned antibiotics being used in Chinese tilapia farms. That means chemicals that regulators decided were too dangerous for your food are still showing up on your dinner plate. But the health problems don't stop at antibiotics. A study found that farm tilapia contains significantly more omega-6 fatty acids than omega-3s, at a ratio of about 11:1. That matters because omega-6s in excess promote inflammation in your body, which is literally the opposite reason you started eating fish in the first place. It's like joining a gym that only serves cheeseburgers. You showed up to get healthier and walked out worse than before. And the real kicker, tilapia delivers almost no omega-3 benefit compared to fish like salmon or sardines. So you're getting all the risk of farmed fish with almost none of the nutritional reward that made you choose seafood in the first place. Your body didn't sign up for that deal. Speaking of fish that trick you into thinking you're eating healthy, let's talk about farmed Atlantic salmon. This one stings because salmon is supposed to be the gold standard of healthy eating, right? Your doctor probably told you to eat more of it. Well, there is a massive difference between what your doctor means and what the grocery store sells you. Here's the thing most people do not realize. Farm-raised Atlantic salmon live in floating ocean pens so packed with fish that parasites and disease run rampant. To combat this, the industry routinely uses pesticides and antibiotics. A major study published in the journal Science examined 2 metric tons of salmon from around the world and found that PCB concentrations in farm-raised salmon were on average almost 8 times higher than in wild salmon. PCBs are probable carcinogens that were banned in the 1970s, yet they keep showing up in farm-raised salmon because the fish meal pellets used as feed contain concentrated levels of these chemicals. And that beautiful pink color you see at the store? Wild salmon get their color naturally from eating krill and shrimp in the ocean. Farm-raised salmon eat processed pellets, which makes their flesh a pale, unappetizing gray. So producers add synthetic dyes to the feed to make the fish look like something you would actually want to buy. You are literally paying premium prices for artificially colored fish that carries higher contaminant levels than its wild cousin. Makes sense, right? Now, if farmed salmon is the wolf in sheep's clothing, swordfish is the wolf that does not even bother with a disguise. Restaurants love to put swordfish on the menu as this elegant, healthy protein option. But according to testing data from the FDA, swordfish carries an average mercury load of 0.995 parts per million, with some samples hitting 3.22 parts per million. For context, the FDA says anything above 1 part per million is cause for serious concern. Mercury is a neurotoxin. It accumulates in your body over time, and it does not care how expensive your dinner was. The FDA and the EPA specifically list swordfish as a fish that pregnant women and children should completely avoid. But here's what bugs me. Most restaurants do not mention any of this. They slap a $38 price tag on a swordfish steak and call it a healthy night out. That is like selling cigarettes at a health food store and hoping nobody reads the label. King mackerel plays the same dangerous game, except it hides behind its smaller, healthier cousins. Regular mackerel, like Atlantic mackerel, is genuinely one of the best fish you can eat. High in omega-3 fatty acids, low in mercury, and affordable. But king mackerel is a completely different animal. It is large enough and lives long enough to accumulate high mercury levels that landed it on the Food and Drug Administration's official Do Not Eat list. That's right, the federal government specifically tells you to avoid this fish, yet it still shows up in markets and on menus across the country. It is like a restaurant serving a dish the health inspector failed and keeping it on the menu anyway because it sells well, but at least you can identify king mackerel by name. Imported farmed shrimp is a whole different kind of problem because you often have no idea what you are actually buying. About 90% of the shrimp Americans eat is imported, mostly from farms in Southeast Asia and Central America. An investigation by the environmental group Oceana found that 30% of shrimp products tested across more than 100 grocery stores were misrepresented, either labeled as the wrong species entirely or marketed as wild-caught when they were actually farmed. The health concerns go beyond mislabeling. Studies have found that imported farmed shrimp can contain antibiotics not approved for use in the United States, along with chemical residues from the pesticides used to manage disease in overcrowded ponds. And here is the kicker. Less than 2% of imported seafood to the United States gets inspected for contamination. That means 98% of what comes through the door is basically operating on the honor system. You would not buy a used car without checking under the hood, but apparently we are fine doing exactly that with our food supply. Orange Roughy sounds like something fancy you would order at a nice restaurant, and that is exactly the problem. The marketing works, but this fish has a dirty secret that starts with its real name, slimehead. Yes, the seafood industry rebranded it because nobody is ordering the slimehead special, but a name change does not change the facts. Orange Roughy can live to be over 100 years old. Think about that for a second. A century of swimming through increasingly polluted oceans, accumulating mercury and other toxins the entire time. This is bioaccumulation on steroids. While a sardine lives maybe 5 years and barely has time to collect anything harmful, an orange roughy has been soaking up pollutants since before your grandparents were born. The FDA lists orange roughy as a fish to avoid because of its high mercury content. On top of that, these fish mature so slowly and reproduce so late in life that decades of overfishing have crashed populations worldwide. You are essentially eating a century-old endangered fish loaded with mercury and paying a premium for the privilege. Not exactly the health food you thought you were getting. Pangasius, which you will see sold as sway or basa at your grocery store, is another fish that survives on marketing and low prices. This catfish relative is farmed almost exclusively in Vietnam's Mekong Delta, in what some experts describe as one of the most intensive food production systems on Earth. The farming produces massive volumes of liquid waste, and the fish themselves have been found to contain concerning levels of contaminants. But here is where it gets really sneaky. Pangasius is one of the most commonly substituted fish in the seafood fraud game. Testing has found it being sold as everything from grouper to sole to cod. An investigation in Atlanta found that more than a third of restaurants tested were selling Pangasius disguised as grouper. So not only might you be eating a fish raised in questionable conditions, you might be eating it without even knowing. You think you are getting grouper for $18 a plate when you are actually getting pond-raised catfish that costs a fraction of that. It is like ordering a Rolex and getting a watch from a gas station display case. Shark might seem like an obvious one to avoid, but here is the twist. You might already be eating it without knowing. A 2025 report found that over 60% of imitation crabs sold in Los Angeles grocery stores contained shark DNA. Shark meat carries some of the highest mercury levels of any commercial fish, and it is being slipped into products that families buy without a second thought. If pregnant women or children are unknowingly consuming shark through mislabeled products, they are being exposed to mercury and heavy metal levels that could genuinely harm development. That is not a hypothetical risk. That is a real danger hiding in plain sight at your grocery store. Big Eye tuna trips people up because tuna feels like such a safe, healthy choice. Some tuna is fine. Canned light tuna, which is usually skipjack, is relatively low in mercury. But Big Eye tuna is a different story entirely. The FDA specifically lists Big Eye tuna as a fish to avoid due to its mercury content. The problem is that tuna has a 59% mislabeling rate according to Oceana's nationwide study, meaning you might be eating Big Eye when you think you ordered yellowfin. At sushi restaurants, which had a 74% mislabeling rate in that same study, you are basically rolling the dice on what species you are actually consuming. It is like ordering a domestic beer and finding out it is 90 proof moonshine. Same category, wildly different consequences. Chilean sea bass sounds premium, and at $30 or more per pound, it certainly costs like it. But this fish, whose real name is Patagonian toothfish, is another masterclass in marketing over substance. It has been so severely overfished that some populations have collapsed entirely. It also accumulates mercury due to its long lifespan and position in the food chain. The illegal fishing around this species is so rampant that at one point, estimates suggested the illegal catch exceeded the legal catch. You are paying top dollar for a fish that might have been caught illegally, carries elevated mercury levels, and comes from populations that can barely sustain themselves. So how do you actually protect yourself at the grocery store? Here is your cheat sheet for spotting wild-caught fish and avoiding the fakes. First, look at the color. Wild salmon has a deep, vibrant red or orange color because of its natural diet of krill and algae. Farmed salmon is paler, with thick white stripes of fat running through it like zebra stripes. Wild salmon has fat that is more integrated into the muscle, giving it a leaner, more uniform appearance. Second, check the price. If wild sockeye salmon is selling for the same price as farmed Atlantic salmon, something is wrong. Wild-caught fish costs more because catching it is harder than growing it in a pen. If the deal looks too good to be true, trust your gut. Third, read the label carefully. Look for the country of origin and the method of harvest. Wild caught should specify where it was caught. Anything from Alaska is a solid bet since every fishery there is certified sustainable. Be suspicious of vague labels that just say Atlantic salmon without specifying wild or farmed, because virtually all Atlantic salmon sold commercially is farmed. Fourth, look for third-party certifications. The Marine Stewardship Council Blue Label for wild-caught fish and the aquaculture. Stewardship Council Label for responsibly farmed fish are your best friends. These certifications mean an independent auditor verified the sourcing. Fifth, buy less processed fish. The more processed a piece of seafood is, the easier it is to swap species. A whole fish or a skin on fillet is much harder to fake than a skinless, boneless piece of mystery white fish. If you can see the skin, you can often identify the species yourself. And finally, do not be afraid to ask questions. Where did this fish come from? When did it arrive? Was it previously frozen? Is it wild or farmed? If your fishmonger cannot answer those basic questions, take your money somewhere else. You deserve to know what you are feeding your family. The bottom line is simple. Fish can absolutely be one of the healthiest proteins on the planet. Wild salmon, sardines, anchovies, Atlantic mackerel, and wild-caught Alaskan pollock are all excellent choices that deliver the omega-3 benefits your body actually needs without the mercury, antibiotics, and contaminants hiding in the options we just talked about. The trick is knowing which fish to trust and which ones to walk right past, no matter how pretty the packaging looks. Because at the end of the day, a $4 can of wild-caught sardines will do more for your heart and your brain than a $30 plate of mislabeled, mercury-loaded fish ever will. That is not opinion. That is just what the science says. Stop paying more for worse food and start reading labels like your health depends on it. Because honestly, it does.